If you're thinking about making a photo book, there are a few key things you should know. You see, for a photographer, making a photo book is a big deal. It's something that defines your work and plays a key role in shaping your voice as an artist. Now, obviously, you don't have to be that serious about it. A book is a book, and you get to decide how you go about it. It could be as complex as expressing something through photography or as simple as a fun book of nice pictures. However, my latest photography zine, The Sinking Sun, was one of those more serious photography projects for me, so we'll speak about it in that context. Building this book was much harder than I expected. It forced me to think about photography in new ways. I also had to make sure psychologically and emotionally I was stable so I didn't get too in my head about my work. And logistically, it was the biggest project I've done yet. But in doing this, I learned a ton about myself and the creative process. You see, personally, I'm fascinated by the creative process. When making stuff, I often wonder what it would be like to look in the minds of other great artists and see what struggles they faced, what they were thinking about, and what things they learned from doing what they did. If I was able to know what was going on through their head as they faced their challenges, I think that would have made my path a lot clearer when I faced mine. Now, we can't do that obviously, but I can at least document what I remember while it's still fresh and share them with you as we progress in our creative journeys together. So that's what we're doing today. Here are 10 things you should know when building your first photo book. 1. You don't need permission. It's often that people, myself included, feel as if we need permission to do something. That permission can either be granted by fame, as in number of subscribers or followers, skill level, which is whether or not we feel good enough or ready enough, or other people, which is people telling you you're ready to do something. And there's a weird cognitive bias that makes us think that if we don't have any one of those things, we are not qualified to do or make something. So really, this applies to any creative project, not just photography and not just building a photo book. This is an imaginary psychological barrier that prevents us from making what we want to make. Let's break this barrier today. You don't need 1 million followers to make a photo book. You don't even need to be the best photographer out there to make a photo book. And you don't need tons of people lining up to buy your photo book to build a photo book. Plus, you don't need someone telling you that's a good idea for you to make it. Because the only real requirement for making the photo book is making the photo book. Putting in the effort and actually doing the work is all it takes. And if you recognize that, you can explore whatever idea excites you rather than waiting for an idea that is worth making. As for more physical barriers, self-publishing today is easier than it ever was. Before, you'd have to go through a publisher, they'd have to approve your project, and then they have to make sure it's marketable, sellable, etc., etc., etc. Which meant that many photographers would never actually make a photo book, because the only photographers who would end up making a photo book are ones who are already successful. And everyone else is stuck thinking, what's the point? But nowadays, you don't have to go down that route. You can build a photo book, submit your PDF online to any self-publishing printing company, and then distribute your book accordingly. You can create whatever you want, however you want, which means you're also not limited on creative freedom. You can pick and choose and develop the topics that actually interest you as opposed to going through the topics that the editor thinks will do well. And in my opinion, when you work on something you actually care about and are actually interested in, you end up creating something better. It's more true to your nature, more real to you, and therefore more real to your audience. You also don't have to sell or share your book if you don't want to. You can simply just make one for yourself. So the point is, you don't need permission to make a photo book. If you want to make a photo book, make a photo book. 2. Don't wait to make a book. What many photographers don't realize is that bookmaking is actually a skill. What does this mean? This means just like photography, you get better at making books through making books. And you can't expect to be an amazing photographer and make an amazing photo book if you've never made a book before. Because there's plenty more that goes into making a photo book than simply just having nice pictures. Meaning, you shouldn't wait to be a good photographer before making a photo book. But rather, you should make your books side by side as you're developing your photography. That way, both skills can improve together. Otherwise, you'll be an expert photographer with weak photo book building skills and a weak photo book. Because if you wait to get good before making a photo book, your new limiter is your bookmaking skill. The sequencing, the theme building, the text and copy, etc., etc., etc. These are all important bookmaking skills that are underdeveloped because you've simply never done it before. Furthermore, making books actually can improve your photography. Bookmaking can teach you more about your photography and bring light to your weaknesses. And these two skills can go back and forth and develop tangentially, not independently. I certainly felt this when I built The Sinking Sun. Making this photography zine made me better as a photographer. It forced me to think about photography in a new way rather than just street photography and documenting my life. And it also gave me purpose to go out and take photos every day because I was actually building something with the photos I was taking. Plus, I learned just how subjective art is. Everyone is taking photos for different reasons. You might be taking photos for landscape photos or travel photos or documentary photos or wedding photos or whatever. But it would be silly to compare someone's street photography photo to someone else's sunset photography because there's a different purpose, a different vision, and a different point. So the idea is, don't wait. Start with a smaller project like a zine and develop your bookmaking skills alongside your photography, not after you feel qualified. 3. People may judge, and that's okay. If you're doing anything creative and have eyes on your work, people will judge. They'll question what you're doing, why you're doing it, and whether it's worth doing. And some of this feedback will be positive and some of it will be negative, and that's okay. Because you've got to understand that other people are looking at your work through the lens of themselves. They'll think things like, personally, I wouldn't make something like that, or another photography zine about sunsets. How original. Which is warranted because people have their opinions, but it really doesn't matter. Because there will always be someone who doesn't like what you're doing. Who cares? Make it anyways. Because the people who are super critical of your work, even if they're right, are probably not doing anything anyways. The ones who are actually working on their own creative projects are simply too busy to worry about whatever anyone else is doing. And the doers themselves know just how much time and effort it takes to make something. Meaning, making something in the first place can sometimes be more impressive than what you make. And action, effort, hard work always warrants respect even if that thing is not your cup of tea. So obviously I'm talking more than just about constructive criticism here. If you're a creator, artist, or photographer and you've got some judgment, good. That's normal. You can't please everyone. So remember who you are, why you're making what you make, and then make it regardless. 4. No one's gonna make it for you. I feel like many artists struggle with this. They have some great idea or dream about what they want to make but never do anything about it. They rely on bursts of inspiration or motivation to be productive instead of taking responsibility for their personal projects. Which is silly because at the end of the day, it's your job and your job alone. It sounds obvious, but no one's gonna make your projects for you. I had this great idea for a zine about sunsets, time, and the philosophy behind action. And no one gave a damn about making that. But I did. So clearly I had to be the one to take action and build and make the thing. And that idea would always remain an idea until I took action. Because ideas without action are worthless. So keep this in mind if you have a personal project or idea that you want to create or develop. It is your job and your job alone. You can't outsource your art. The sooner you accept this reality, the sooner you can get working on your project. And the sooner you start working on your project, the sooner the project will complete itself. And then you can move on to the next. That's the creative process in a nutshell. 5. The idea comes to life as you work on it. Once you've accepted the amount of work you have to do as the price you have to pay to create what you want to create, things actually get easier. The moment you stop avoiding the work, looking for shortcuts around doing the work, and spend less time fantasizing about what you're going to do, your ideas will actually come to life. Because the idea you have at the beginning isn't fully fleshed out and it will never be. It changes, alters, and goes different ways based on the feedback and things you realize as you work on it. And that's the point. The idea comes to life as you work on it. This for sure happened with me with The Sinking Sun. When I first started this project, I had a completely different vision for the book. I thought it was going to be some nice flip-through art book with the best sunsets and nicest looking images that I collected over the years. But as I started to lay the groundwork, I realized I needed something more to hold everything together. Because there was an underlying philosophical motivation for why I wanted to create this in the first place. I just needed to find it. And keep in mind, this was after I already finished 2 to 3 draft versions. So when I finally accepted this new change in direction, I began to write. I wrote about sunsets, what they meant, why they were important, and what they were a reflection of. And I played back and forth with this idea until I eventually had the right text to match my images. And then things started to make sense. So that's what I mean by the idea comes to life as you work on it. Creative work is like building a puzzle. You start by assembling all the pieces, then you begin putting the puzzle together. Some pieces may not fit, or you might have to put them off for later or find different places for them. But eventually, as you keep working on it, the puzzle comes together and the idea comes to life. Once you realize this, you'll realize how important it is to get over all this pre-project planning. Because the puzzle only makes sense as you start to work on it, and you can't plan out every single stage of the project. So the sooner you start, the sooner you can put the puzzle together. Which means start laying down things before you feel ready. And don't wait for the idea to be complete in your head before you start. Because the idea can easily end up being something completely different than what you thought it was going to be. But if you just get started, the processing time can begin, and the idea will come to life on its own. 6. Expect it to take longer than expected. Many creative projects will take longer than you think. Many creative projects will be more difficult than you think, meaning you might think it'll get done in a few months, but it can easily take much longer. And it's often we grossly underestimate just how long something takes to make. Sure, if you just whiffed up a first draft, you can get it done within a few weeks or even days. But if you want to make this thing the best it could be, you gotta keep working on it. For this photography zine, the idea was born almost 2 years ago, and gathering images itself took about 1 to 2 years. And building the zine took roughly half a year to a year. And then, even when I thought it was done, I had to go back and remake it several times. I took the zine from 100 pages to 66 pages to 96 pages. I added, removed images, re-added images, and deleted sections. And I dealt with a lot of printing issues and trashy draft versions. I made multiple versions upon multiple versions until it was finally done. So however long you think it's going to take, expect it to take longer. However hard you think it's going to be, expect it to be harder. Because quality projects take quality time. And you must be willing to restart as many times as possible to get the thing right. And don't fall temptation to say, this is good enough. That can easily become a trap of you settling in your creative work. Now, this obviously applies to the bigger creative projects. Something like a YouTube short or TikTok, you don't have to beat into perfection. But a book, I think many would agree, is a bigger and more important project. Alright, so if a project is going to be longer and harder than expected, how do we account for this? A phrase I like to repeat to myself is, I have no sunk costs. In this context, sunk costs is the time and money you spent already invested in this project. And the dangerous part about having sunk costs is that it can make you more committed to a certain project and getting it done because you're already halfway there. But sometimes the idea needs to be scrapped, changed, and redone to make it better. So having no sunk costs means it doesn't matter how much time or money I've already spent invested into this project. If I need to remake it from scratch, I'll remake it from scratch. If I need to scrap the whole thing, I'll scrap the whole thing. And being willing to restart and redo the project as many times as possible is very important. And we're often not willing to do this because we're in a rush to get the thing done. But telling ourselves I have no sunk costs can remind ourselves that we are willing to redo and remake this project as many times as possible to get it done and get it good. And this results in better work. 7. You gotta talk about it. You gotta talk about your book. If no one knows about it, no one can buy it. Regardless of whether or not you're trying to sell your photo book, if you want people to see it, you gotta tell people about it. And this is not to be confused with less talk, more work. Less talk, more work is a phrase that I've mentioned before, which is focused on doing the work rather than talking about it. So this phrasing might seem contradictory, but these are contextual and they're different. I don't mean telling everyone about your great, fantastic project and never doing any work on it. I actually mean that when your project is nearly done, start telling people who actually might be interested about it. This gives people who actually want to buy your thing a chance to buy your thing. And I get it, many artists are iffy about the idea of marketing and selling. From the artist's perspective, we made this thing to make the thing because we wanted to make it, not to make a quick buck. But again, understand that if you don't talk about it, no one's going to know about it, and the people who would like and enjoy this book or whatever you're making are denied the opportunity of actually purchasing and getting it. So for me, the objective of this book wasn't to sell. I wanted to make the book on its own, and that was the most important thing for me. And of course, I wanted to make it available for you guys, but if no one ended up buying it or it ended up not selling, it was still a win in my book. So that's how I created an internal victory for this project. But I knew it was still important to market it as if I was trying to sell it. That way I can learn and gain experience from doing so, and I can also get the book into the hands of people who wanted it, which meant talking about it. A lot. I made videos, posts, shared a bunch of behind the scenes, and integrated the book into as much of my content as I could. And I did so in a way that added value, like this video here. That way I didn't have to be too salesy. So understand that you can market in a way that fits your values. And also don't underestimate how much you need to talk about something to get it on someone's radar. People have busy lives and they're not thinking about you and your little project. So market more than you think. Because there are plenty of people who are watching this right now thinking, you made a book, even though I've been talking about it for months now. So that's the point. Talk about your project or no one will know about it. And also thank you to everyone who picked up a copy. I really do appreciate the support. 8. Many of your good photos aren't going to make it. This is something you're going to have to get used to as you make photo books. Many of your photos simply aren't going to make the cut. Why? Because as you go through the building process, your book will take many different directions. And as you understand the project more, what makes for a good photo will actually change itself as well. Because in the context of a book, a good photo is one that fits. One that matches and makes sense, not one that simply looks nice. It's not simply a photo with the best exposure, composition, and colors. Rather, one that suits the theme, adds to the message, and improves the book as a whole. The right image provides synergy and makes the book work as opposed to a random standalone image. So realizing this, changed my view of photography. If you're thinking about making a photo book, you have to pick images that make sense, not simply ones that look nice. Of course, if making a nice looking photo book is your purpose for building the photo book, that's a whole different story. But regardless, not every photo will make the cut. You're going to have to choose between many of your favorites. And you have to get used to saying no to many photos that you like. This means killing a lot of art babies, as they call it. 9. Nothing done well is insignificant. As I've progressed in my photography journey, I've moved on to bigger and more challenging projects. I'll always consider myself somewhat of an amateur, but photography is something I've become more serious about as time passes. I'm doing new projects, facing bigger problems, and doing harder things. And it's often that I'll sit here and wonder, why am I doing all this hard stuff? Because although the creative process can be fun, it can also be very stressful. Not just for photography, but doing this YouTube channel as well and writing the newsletter. Part of it's fun, part of it's work. It's tedious, monotonous, stale, and can be boring because it's the same thing over and over and over again. And although I enjoy it, not every day is a buzz. So sometimes I'll sit down and ask myself, why am I doing all this? Why am I trying so hard? And why do I keep showing up every day? Because there has to be a deeper point to it, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. And after thinking about it for some time, my current understanding of it is that I have to. It's as simple as that. Photo books, YouTube videos, blog posts, these are all projects that I simply have to make. It's kind of similar to the point we made earlier, no one's going to make your work for you. And so even if my mind tries and tells me, chill, just enjoy life a bit, the drive to make the thing outweighs the desire to not do the thing, which results in me making the thing and continuing making the thing. And I think fulfillment in life comes with conquering these challenging obstacles. It doesn't come from laying around all day doing nothing. Because while that sounds nice, it can get boring real quick. The big takeaway being, nothing done well is insignificant. All of this work and effort that you put into your creativity might feel pointless, but it's not. It's worth it. Why? Because doing the thing and doing it well is the point. Making something is the point. And doing difficult things makes you better. It may feel insignificant to create something that no one's going to care about, but it's not. Because the actions, the act of creating, the bettering of yourself is the significant part about it. Creative projects are simply self-improvement vehicles for you as a creative and an individual. And the better you get, the bigger projects you can tackle. And the more things you do, the better you'll feel about yourself because you're more accomplished. And this feeling of accomplishment lies on the far side of challenges. And so fulfillment comes not from external outcomes, but from doing something you've deemed worthy of your time and doing it well. AKA, nothing done well is insignificant. 10. Once it's done, let go. When you've been working on a photo book for a long time, it's difficult to know when the project itself is done. And if you're anything like me, there's a bit of perfectionism within you. Part of you wants it to be just right, and you keep hammering away at the thing until it's what it's supposed to be. The problem is, you can hammer away at the thing forever and never actually finish the thing. So a practical way to know when the project is done is that when changing or making edits to the project doesn't actually make the project better. Rather, adding and removing photos or variables makes the photo book worse or just neutral. And anything and everything you do with your current skill level doesn't improve the project. That's a good lead indicator to know when your book is done, because there's nothing more you can do. So this is also a skill you have to build. Don't half-ass the project, but also learn to know when it's finished. And when it's done, it's done. Let go and move on to the next project. So let's wrap this up. If you're thinking about building a photo book, here are 10 things you should know. 1. You don't need permission to make a book. The work is all that's required. Self-publishing is easier than ever, and you don't need someone to tell you it's a good idea. 2. Don't wait to make a book. If you want to make a book, make one. Bookmaking is a skill that must be developed alongside your photography, not after you feel like you're good enough. 3. People may judge, and that's okay. This is your project, not theirs. This is something you want to make. Trust in that. 4. No one's going to make it for you. If you have a great idea, it is your responsibility to do it. You can't outsource your art. 5. The idea comes to life as you work on it. Start by laying down the pieces of the puzzle and you'll start seeing the bigger picture. 6. Expect it to take longer than expected. We greatly underestimate how long challenging projects take. Plan accordingly. 7. You gotta talk about it. When the book is done, tell people about it. If no one knows about it, no one can buy it. 8. Many of your good photos aren't going to make it. Get used to killing off many of your favorites. Because a good photo is about having the right image, not the best looking one. 9. Nothing done well is insignificant. The work you put in will be worth it. The outcomes themselves are irrelevant, but your actions have value. 10. Once it's done, let go. Lay this idea to rest so you can move on to the next. Thanks for watching, guys. If you found this helpful, please share this with a friend who also might find this helpful. Also, you can buy a copy of The Sinking Sun in the link down below if you're still interested. It's my first photography scene that I spent a lot of time working on that might also help you out in life. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Peace.